us jump on. Let everyone who is joining us jump on, and while we do that, yeah, I've been dealing with a lot of chronic patient issues. Today, this last week, I was talking with a patient who was succumbing to life stresses. Her daughter's children, right? They weren't being well taken care of. They weren't being fed properly. Her daughter's really busy, I guess, and she's having to step in at a moment's notice, kind of throwing off her whole schedule, and being grandma hero, right? Like I mean, this could easily be you, right? So she's going to pick up kids from school and a kid from sports practice, and really just the easy thing to do is just to go get some fast food for a child that hasn't had any food all day because they're really not being taken care of. I mean, what a sad kind of story. And so certainly for herself, choosing convenience foods for herself and slipping back into old habits was really kind of easy, when before she was on a schedule, an eating schedule, and she's, taking her on a schedule, taking her supplements and the things that she's doing for herself because she had committed to herself to fix her problems. And so it's so easy, right, to slip back into these old habits when you lose sight of the goals and the why you really want to reach them. So that's a really important point. These habits and why are why she has leaky gut and leaky brain, why she's losing motivation, why her weight won't come off, why she's dealing with more brain fog and trouble thinking clearly. Contrast that with a patient I was speaking with on a follow-up conversation, who was, before she was struggling to really get going and struggling, having difficulty losing the weight she wanted and trouble sticking with her food plan. And the previous visit, we had a real heart-to-heart where I sat with her and I reminded her of her goals, and we discussed those. We brought them up again, her goals and motivations for putting herself first for once, because at this point, she was really giving less than she wanted to and didn't realize about leaky gut and how really important that is for helping her symptoms to resolve. So this visit, like I said, I was having this follow-up visit, conversation with her, and she let me know that she had lost 10 pounds and a couple of inches in the last month. She had recommitted to putting herself first, to planning and preparing everything she needed to do to reach her goals. She was reminding herself of her goals every day and was taking to heart what I had taught her about leaky gut. So now that everyone appears to be on here, let's talk about leaky gut. I thought this topic would be really, really important because it applies to almost every one of us. There are some foods, which I'll mention later, that have a huge impact on causing leaky gut. And I thought it would be appropriate for everyone, because everyone who certainly has a weight gain issue or trouble losing weight, insulin resistance, brain fog, migraine headaches, asthma, allergies, skin issues, autoimmunity, so many symptoms can be attributed to leaky gut. These symptoms are so frustrating for you. And most of you don't ever make the connection that leaky gut can lead to all of these. I mean, thyroid's pretty important, right? We've talked about thyroid. We've talked about insulin resistance. Let me explain leaky gut. All right, so I'm going to have you use your imagination here. Think about a patchwork quilt of little squares, right, all sewn together in this quilt or sheet. And this is what lines the intestines, all right? And imagine that something is causing the stitching between the cells, those squares, to loosen and to break. And so now you have parts of that patchwork quilt that have rips and holes between the squares, which I would say again are the cells of your gut. And what happens is undigested foods, particles, organisms like bacteria and worms and yeasts and bits of sugars and like I said, undigested food particles will leak in through those holes. Now imagine just underneath that layer are all these little blood vessels, little veins and capillaries. And these food particles and undigested stuff and microorganisms are leaking down into the bloodstream. The bloodstream in the intestines goes right into the liver. First stop. And it's there that so many of our problems are unleashed, right? So here you have these things leaking into the blood, these undigested particles of food, these bacteria, again, these worms and so forth, are causing an immune reaction right away. And so you get a histamine reaction. You're familiar with histamine? That causes itching and redness of the skin. So a skin manifestation is a direct result of leaky gut in action. and then you have these immune complexes. Like I said, this immune reaction happens right there in the intestine, right under the lining. And you have these white blood cells that complex with these particles. And where do they go? Okay, so they go through the liver, they go through the body, and they deposit in your joints, in your muscles, in your lungs, in your brain. What I'm saying is leaky gut leads to, we're going to kind of detail a few different things, leads to leaky brain, which is a breakdown of the blood-brain barrier, which is the brain's protective immune layer. And as a result of that, you get symptoms like migraine headaches, brain fog or lack of concentration, clear thinking, even forgetfulness and declining executive function. Now, many of you are dealing with those things, and many of you are afraid of where that's leading. And certainly this is a cause of Alzheimer's disease, because you start to have this leaky brain and your brain becomes inflamed because that immune barrier is not intact anymore. And you start to have more inflammation than your brain can clear out. And this is exactly what leads to an imbalance in I know I'm going down a little bit of a rabbit trail here, but we'll come back to it. It leads to the symptoms, signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's, which is a breakdown of the white matter of the brain, a loss of connections, all right, between the neurons, the brain cells, all right? And so you have this waning of this tissue, this shrinking, leading to Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is the #3 killer in this country now. So this is why I have to bring this up, because it's so important to prevent. Okay, leaky gut, back to leaky gut. Leaky gut leads to leaky lungs. Yeah, again, where you start to destroy the integrity, the immune integrity of the lungs. And it is a physical barrier as well. And this leads to things like chronic bronchitis and asthma, allergies, and certainly sometimes super poor stamina. Like you go up a flight of stairs and you're done. Like you're huffing and puffing because you've lost the integrity. You think, well, yeah, I'm out of shape. Well, this has a lot to do with what's going on in your gut. All right, so this also leads to leaky kidneys. Now, leaky kidneys, this is often in association with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, or even type 1 diabetes, because your kidneys are, the filter is breaking down and you start to leak proteins, and this is known as microalbumin. If you have been to the doctor and have been diagnosed with diabetes, they check you for this. They do testing for this, blood testing and urine testing, to see if you have any signs of kidney damage. Because unfortunately, 80% of diabetics get chronic kidney disease, and it is characterized in part by this microalbuminuria, or leaking of proteins through your kidneys. So this happens again because these proteins, these particles, are leaking into the bloodstream from your gut, and your kidneys have to filter that. Now, I think I need to take off a little bit on this and tell you a story of a patient who really has done well to reverse this. And I mentioned this the other patient. I'm going to tell you about a patient who I just spoke with today, and this is why I do this. This is so fun, because she's let me know that she is still losing weight. She has no digestive symptoms anymore. A lot of times, leaky gut doesn't cause symptoms like digestive symptoms. I've mentioned, the symptoms that are caused by leaky gut, the fatigue and the I mentioned trouble concentrating, forgetfulness. I mentioned trouble with asthma and allergies and weight gain and all these joint pains and muscle pain. But I'm talking about the symptoms that you might have with indigestion, like heartburn and constipation and or even diarrhea, just whatever those gastrointestinal symptoms might be. You don't always have those types of symptoms with leaky gut, so you don't know you're not alert to that possibility unless you have made the connection that we just did. So it's important to try to recognize that you may not have symptoms like digestive symptoms, bloating and so forth. Okay, so this patient, she has continually been doing so well with her program, her care program. She is on it. She remembers her goals. She reviews them all the time. She remembers why she is so motivated. Her kids. She has kids she's raising, and unfortunately, she's gone through a recent divorce or separation, excuse me, and she's got these responsibilities, work responsibilities. She's got life to deal with, but she knew that she couldn't come to the table 100% unless she took care of herself. And so she constantly reminds herself of these goals and motivations. And she has lost 48 pounds, and she will say of fat, because she feels stronger. She's been doing exercise to maintain her muscle mass. And excuse me, muscle mass weighs more than fat mass. So she's been doing everything she's been taught. She's been going through planning her meals. She's been eating enough. She's been doing everything that she needed to do. She is happier despite, guys, like despite the marital turmoil. She is clearly happy in our conversation, smiling all the time, lighting up when she's talking about, the things that matter most. All right. So let's just say, and she's worked on this. She is avoiding the foods that are inflammatory. And I'm going to list these 5 inflammatory foods, which I will discuss in greater detail in my master class, and I will share why. But these foods are huge causes of leaky gut. All right, so they are glutens or gliadins, dairy, and I'm talking about not only the casein protein, but the lactose sugar involved in dairy foods, soy, anything soy, corn, and fructose. Now, you may or may not be aware that sucrose or table sugar is fructose plus glucose together. Super toxic, super inflammatory, especially because our liver has a difficult time breaking down fructose, and it ends up causing fatty liver. So it's the mechanism of leaky gut leads to fatty liver, which I didn't really discuss, and it's a huge topic, but that's another thing you ought to know. And so when you can get rid of these foods, you're on your way to healing leaky gut. But I will say this, and I'm going to leave it there tonight, but take home point, leaky gut can be responsible for so many symptoms you are having. Fixing leaky gut requires more than just changing your diet. So I will be covering the required steps in detail during my upcoming masterclass on June 5th through the 9th. And I hope to see you all there. I hope you all have a wonderful night, and you guys take care.